إلى يوم الدين. So we talked about what constitutes Rahman. Said that Rahman, its absolute sense, which is embedded in the name of Rahman and makes it very particular and specific to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that is Ar-Rahman is someone who brings people from non-existence to existence, and he is the one who guides to the means of eternal felicity, and also the one who blesses with eternal felicity and eternal happiness. A person can't be called Rahman, can be described with immense and absolute mercy, unless he is able to give people the not just the means to, but is able to deliver that. For example, you might be able to teach people the actions that will bring them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and will give they would or should give them access to Jannah in Akhirah. Even prophets can teach us that. Even prophets can guide us to that. But in the end, mercy lies in giving you that. So no one can allow you to have that access to paradise, or that eternal life of bliss, felicity in Akhirah, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that none of us can enter Jannah with his deeds. And he said, even you, O Messenger of Allah, he said, even me, unless Allah encompasses me with his mercy. So encompassing you with the mercy, no one can does that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bearing in mind, if we reflect on the fact that our actions, regardless of how immense they are never equal to the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our actions, regardless of how immense and pure they are, they're never fully pure from confusion of intention, from insincerity sometimes, or ulterior motives. So the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts these actions and rewards them with felicity in Akhirah, that is part of His mercy, and no one can actually do that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then finally, the eternal blessing of gazing upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah. That's also, no one can do that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Ar-Rahman is one of those specific names that only belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, another way of looking at Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, as we will be trying to understand the difference between both names. As we said, Ar-Rahman is more specific than Ar-Rahim. Some scholars also say that the fact that Ar-Rahman is more specific than Ar-Rahim means that Ar-Rahman includes the meaning of Ar-Rahim and has some extra things. And that is reflected even in the linguistic construction of the word. In Arabic, when two words come from the same stem, but one has more letters than the other, they come from the same root, and they are pretty much in the same morphological shape. They're both adjectives or adverbs or so on and so forth, but one has more letters than the other. They said the one that has got more letters has more meaning. So they say كل زيادة في المبنى زيادة في المعنى غالبا. Every increase in the structure is increase in the meaning. So for example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we use the word in Arabic, the word حذر, which means cautious, and also there is also the word حاذر, which also means cautious. Both come from the root حذر, which means to become cautious or to have the cautiousness. Hadar is cautiousness. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that Fir'aun and his people said, وَإِنَّا لَجَمِيعٌ حَاذِرُونَ. We're all cautious. In another recitation, وَإِنَّا لَجَمِيعٌ حَذِرُونَ. without the alif. So the difference between both, even though both are adjectives, is Hadir has extra meaning because it has extra alif. If we count the letters of Rahim, Ra and Ha and Ya and Mim, that's 4. If we count the letters of Ar-Rahman, Ra and Ha and Mim and Alif and Noon, so it has 5 letters there, even though it's written as 4. So Ar-Rahman, because of extra letters, also have extra meaning. So Ar-Rahman includes the meaning of Ar-Rahim and beyond. However, in order to distinguish both names, so they said Ar-Rahim is someone who is merciful in this life. Ar-Rahman is merciful in this life and in the hereafter. However, some scholars give us a very beautiful and very interesting difference between both, specifically based on pure linguistic shape of the word. And this is I want you to think about this in kind of an in-depth way. In Arabic, when we have different formulas of expressing adjectives. So, for example, or qualities. When I say, for example, someone is hungry, I say jaw'an. When someone is generous, I will say kareem. When I say that someone is angry, I would say ghadban. So we have different formulas that express attributes and qualities. And that's not haphazard. Each one indicates something. So from a linguistic perspective, the ghadban and abshan and jaw'an is on a scale, morphological scale called fa'lan. It follows fa'lan. While kareem and azim and halim and alim is on the scale fa'il. So fa'lan and fa'il. By looking across the different qualities that are on the scale fa'lan, scholars have discovered that this scale indicates intensity of an attribute or a quality. When you are hungry, for example, when you say that someone is hungry, it means he is intensely in need of food. When you say that someone is angry, it doesn't mean it's very superficial. It means something must have made him intensely angry. It has touched his anger in a very intense way. So that's why he is ghadban, or he is jaw'an, he's hungry. While the scale of fa'il, also by looking at morphology, scholars have realized that the scale of fa'il indicates continuation. That this quality exists in that person or dwells in that person for a long time. When someone is kareem, for example, generous, it doesn't mean he is generous at one point and he's not generous elsewhere. He must have been disciplining himself to become generous until it became second nature to him. So when you say someone is generous, it means by his nature, he is generous. He does that all the time. While if we compare that to the scale of fa'lan, jaw'an, for example, you're not intensely hungry all the time. It's at a specific point in time after which once you eat, that stops. But karam, generosity, is something that exists all the time. Now, looking at these two descriptions or these two qualities, one indicates intensity and one indicates continuity. If someone has a quality as an intense quality, it doesn't exist all the time. So for example, if you are merciful, you can't encompass the highest levels of mercy. Why? There will always be shortage in what you can offer the person in front of you. Let's say for example, if someone has lost their father and that's causing them extreme pain, you can show your mercy to that person by offering your condolence, by sympathy or empathy. But there is no way that you can bring this father back to life in order to alleviate this pain. The only one who can do that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't it? So it indicates that intensity. So in terms of intensity, there is always shortage. In terms of continuity of a quality, let's say if you are merciful, you are not merciful all the time. Well, it might be a good quality in you that you're merciful to everyone, but not with your enemies. If the person who is involved, who is in pain, you might find it difficult in the side of your heart to feel sad for the person who's going through some difficulty because this person has done something bad. So in order to combine both Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, both address two aspects of mercy from a linguistic perspective. One means the intensely merciful, and the other means the continually merciful. And none of us can combine these two, can be intensely merciful, have that highest level, unlimited mercy, and all the time. Except the one who can encompass that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His mercy is immense, that He subhanahu wa ta'ala can, at the end, talking about the intellectual possibility of that. Intellectually, it is possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put someone who disbelieves in Him in Jannah. No one can say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't do that. Even though, legally speaking, Sharia-wise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said no. That whoever associates other with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will not send them to Jannah. But is it intellectually possible for Allah to do that? Yes, it is. Why? Because it is His kingdom. He does whatever He wants. So you can't say, well, it is injustice for Allah. You can't say that. It's injustice for Allah to punish someone who has worshipped Him all his life. Nor you can say, it is unfair to equate someone who has worshipped Him with someone who has never said La ilaha illallah. You can't say that, because that's why they say al-dhulm, injustice, can never be ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because injustice means to put something not in the right position. That's what dhulm is about, putting something not in the right position. And whatever Allah places, He places it, it's always the right position. Therefore you can't ascribe injustice to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we look at mercy from that perspective, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is immense, is intense, but at the same time it's continuous. It has never happened, regardless of how a person can turn against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or does turn against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never stops to provide for that individual. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never stops giving life to that individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look at the four components. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never stops to make the tools of hidayah available to that individual. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that inna Allah la yamal hatta tamallu. Allah will never be fed up with you. You are the only person who stop yourself away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Regardless, how many times, how many mistakes, how many crimes, how many injustices you've committed in your life, there is always a space to come back, and there is no need to elaborate on this. We all know the hadith of the man who killed the 99 people. And in other words, there is no point where you can say to someone, oh, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is restricted, and this is you can't say to someone, you have used up all your credit from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no more chance for you. Ar-Rahman is someone who provides that continuously, regardless. He subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to create individuals and fashions them in a good way and provides them with material pleasures and material powers, regardless of what decision this person makes later on in life, whether he decides to become a Muslim or not a Muslim, regardless of whether he decides to live a life of acknowledging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being thankful to Him or not. He subhanahu wa ta'ala never decides at the end of the month to stop this person from receiving the benefits or the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because for this whole month he hasn't prayed once. He subhanahu wa ta'ala provides that. So that's why Ar-Rahman is more encompassing, and then Ar-Rahim means that continuity. And I believe that putting Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim as complementing each other is very, very important. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them together. Allah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Even though there are also other names that we have in the Quran of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to start his book with Bismillahi ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim, to teach us that this is what kind of defines the universe and what defines the creation of man. So, what is the share of human beings then from these two names, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim? And how can we, if we can't call someone Ar-Rahman, but as human beings, when we remember the name Ar-Rahman, what does that have as an implication in our day-to-day life? And how is that different from Ar-Rahim? Well, we understand that we should be merciful to people. But what is the difference between being merciful to people through the lens of Ar-Rahman and through the lens of Ar-Rahim? The lens of Ar-Rahman teaches us to be merciful towards people from the spiritual side. Oh, is it? Yeah. Yeah. So when we say that we should, in our day-to-day life, attach ourselves or link ourselves or manifest the word Ar-Rahman in our life, that means showing mercy to those who are sinful through the Rahmaniyya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Showing mercy to those who are heedless, guiding them, helping them in a good way, in a good manner, in a gentle way. Looking at sinful people with the eye of mercy, not with the eye of despise. Not with the eye of despise. Looking at the sinful people that possibly they have a need to fall into this sin, or they have an excuse, or it's their weakness. And that understanding also that sins, when people commit them, finding an excuse for them. But also when we commit them, we don't take that as an excuse. We understand also that mercy is that ma'siyah or disobedience is part of the bigger plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even when that happens, Ibn Ata'illah Secondary rahimahullah ta'ala says so beautifully, he says, an indication that you trust your deeds is feeling hopeless when you fall into the traps of sin. An indication that you trust your deeds is falling into hopelessness when you fall into the traps of sin. We should travel to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not with our deeds, but with His help subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deeds, whether good or bad, sinful deeds or good deeds, they are vehicles that we ride in our travel to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When our vehicle breaks down, yes, it is our responsibility to make sure that we fix this vehicle to continue our travel. But we should also understand or realize that the breaking down was meant to happen, and it's in the larger scheme of things, and it could be a blessing in disguise. It could have saved us an accident that could have happened on the motorway, or loads of other things. Beautifully, Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Jili, this is kind of a bit of an advanced talk. Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Jili talks about the possibility of righteous people or awliya falling into sin. And he says, well, anyone would fall into mistakes, regardless of their status. But there is a difference between someone falling into sin intentionally and someone falling into sin because of human weakness. Someone acknowledging that this is not a good thing. Someone falling into makruh, disliked, and someone falling into haram, prohibited, and someone falling into a grave sin. These are different degrees. When someone makes a little mistake, it's different from someone making a big mistake. Even a little mistake for someone who is supposed to be more disciplined is considered as if it is big. But your expectations, the level of your expectations gets higher when you see the amount of discipline, the amount of training this person has made. You wouldn't expect a mistake of a specific level, even if it's very superficial, to happen from someone who's really professional, but you would accept that from a beginner. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, the difference, he says, that some awliya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them of the mistakes that they will commit. But when at the point of doing that mistake, Allah takes that knowledge away from them so that they fall into it. Because if they had that knowledge, along with committing it, they will not do it. If you know that you are going to fall, if you take that step, you will not take the step. So Allah takes that, He covers his eye so that he fall into that. And He uses the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when they say that Musa alayhi salam said to Adam, how come that you have eaten from the forbidden tree? He said, do you blame me for something that Allah has predestined for me? So Adam alayhi salam was aware that this was predestined for him, but yet he has made that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took that knowledge away from him. So Sayyid Abdul Karim al-Jili says, the difference between a wali, a righteous man, and a fasiq, pervert or an evil person is the fasiq does that intentionally and he is not aware. Well, the wali might be aware that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, we need to understand that there is something called sharia and there is something called haqiqah. The sharia, you might be counted from that righteous man. From the sharia perspective, he's sinful. But from the haqiqah perspective, he's obedient. Because he has obeyed the larger scheme of things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. When someone, for example, this is also to develop in this point a bit, they say that one of the salihin received the news that one of his children died. So he started laughing. They said to him, his teacher said to him, how come that you're laughing? He said, I'm showing my pleasure with the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, no. Showing the pleasure with whatever Allah has predestined for you is in your heart. Outwardly, you should cry. Outwardly, you should cry. Because outwardly, this is the natural response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from you in that situation. When you lose something, when something calamity happens to you, Allah expects you to cry. But contentment is not outward, it's in the heart. When the Prophet ﷺ lost his son Ibrahim, he said the eyes shed tears, but the heart is content. So we have to understand these like the very intricate things. So through that lens of Ar-Rahman, what we are actually doing is, when we look at that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has given creation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving guidance, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives felicity, and He is the controller of eternal blessings. Then when we look at the individuals who fall into sin with this eye, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that individual, He's merciful. Or He has, that itself shows that He has mercy to show them. خَلَقَهُمْ لِيَرْحَمَهُمْ. He created, as Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people to show them mercy. He didn't create them to show them punishment and to show them anger. In the hadith that we all know, Inna rahmati, Allah says, Inna rahmatiha sabaqat ghadabi. My mercy has preceded my anger. My mercy has preceded my anger. And we'll touch upon that later on. So our share from that is to stop, to never stop. First, to stop despising the people of disobedience, and to never stop giving them guidance and helping them. That's the side of Ar-Rahman. What is our share in the name Ar-Rahim? Our share in the name Ar-Rahim is to fulfill the needs of people. That's kind of the physical side of mercy. To make sure that there is no one, no faqir, no needy individual in your neighborhood, in your street, anywhere, unless you actually take good care of them. They mentioned about Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam al-Husayn radiallahu ta'ala, that the people used to think that he is not generous, that he wouldn't give people. Until he passed away. When they woke up one day and they realized that the bags of flour and food that are left in them, they used to find every morning at Fajr time at their doors, disappeared. And that is Imam Zayn al-Abidin died on that day. So what he used to do, they realized who was helping them and who was putting these in front of them in front of their doors every day. Same thing is mentioned about Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari rahmatullah alayhi. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, who died 926, his contemporary Imam Sakhawi rahimahullah ta'ala, who was a muhaddith, described him as being stingy. But many other scholars, students of Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria and others, said As-Sakhawi was wrong in this. And that's why we should never accept the shahada, the testimony of contemporaries against each other. When you read in history, for example, two scholars saying something about each other, you should take that with, and they are contemporaries, they lived at the same time, you take that with a pinch of salt. Because the fact, regardless of how great they are in knowledge, but remember that a person has great knowledge, not necessarily that person has been cleansed from all human traits of disliking people. Ibn Ata'illah also says, لَيْسَ كُلُّ مَنْ ثَبَتَ تَخْصِيصُهُ كَمُلَ تَخْلِيصُهُ. Not everyone who's been selected is necessarily fully purified. Not everyone who's selected is necessarily fully purified. You might select someone to become a manager or a boss or something in the future, and that happens through a process of very, very long process. That person gets refined, isn't it? So being chosen for a specific status, spiritual status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't necessarily, we should not, and that's a failure of human beings. When we read the biography of a person and say, this is a great scholar. Yes, he's a great scholar, but he's also a human. He's a great scholar, but he also gets affected. He also has needs. He also gets irritated by people who criticize him. He will have certain dislikings of other scholars at his time. He will also feel sad if students leave him and go to somebody else. It does happen. Why? Because that's a human thing. So we should, while we are acknowledging that, that should not deprive us from taking the immense knowledge of that individual, and that immense knowledge should not blind us from seeing the fact that this is a scholar. So anyway, Imam Sakhawi rahimahullah used to describe Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria of being stingy. But other scholars of the same time and later on, they say that was a mistake of Sakhawi rahimahullah. Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria was a man of secret charity. He used to give his charity secretly. That's why when someone gives his charity secretly, you might think, well, he doesn't actually give, and so on and so forth. So our share in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the name of Rahim is to make sure that you give to people and make sure that the people who turn to you with needs or with wants or with requests, you fulfill that, and even you go beyond that. In the biography of one of the scholars of the Malik Madhab I was reading yesterday, he was again a qadi. Someone came to him and he praised him with some lines of verse, and he mentioned in that this person, this scholar who was deserving of this praise. After the Prophet ﷺ, he carries that heritage of spreading the deen. And then at the end of the lines, he said to him, well, I'm in need, so if you can help me with something. So this scholar quickly opened a box in his house. He took the man to his house, opened the box, and he brought to him a whole set of clothes and shoes, and like a whole attire that he was saving for possibly like big events and stuff like that. And he said, take that. And then he opened another box and gave him a bag of money, 25 golden dinars. And he said, this is everything I have in my house. I'm giving you everything that I have in my house. This is the set that I would wear to meet the governor with, and this is the money that I have for the rest of my life. So that man said to him, well, to be honest, this is not what I wanted. I would have been happier with much less than that. I was just turning to you because I just needed you to buy me a sheep for 1 or 2 dirhams. You're giving me 25 dinars. He said to him, well, you praising me with this poetry, and you're saying that I'm an inheritor of the Prophet ﷺ, and you want me to give you a sheep. Well, that's too cheap for only for that line. I give you everything that I have. So that again, that shows that mercy is not to give the individual what they expect. You always exceed their expectations. Sometimes mercy could be to not to deliver to the individual hard and harsh news in a harsh way. Also, again, one of the very interesting stories of Abu Uthman, either Abu Uthman al-Haddadi or somebody else from the scholars of the Madhab of Imam Malik, is that as a judge, he was so merciful with criminals that when he decides to put a criminal to prison, like someone has been proven to be in trouble and he needs to be imprisoned, he wouldn't tell him, okay, take him to prison. He would say, can we go for a walk? They would go for a walk, and then he would have a conversation with the person and joke with him, and he chooses always the route that passes by the prison. When he gets to the prison, right in front of the prison, he would say, let's go inside. And then he would just give him to the guards of the prison, and they would put him in the cell. They said that was how gentle he was in even delivering the punishment to the individual. Just like a doctor who wants to put someone to sleep and then to operate on them, he will talk to them about something other than that, because if you deliver something harsh to someone in a harsh manner, it could be you kill them 1,000 times before you actually deliver that decision to them. If the person, mercifulness as well through this name is, if you can't help financially, or you can't even go to somebody else. So sometimes you might not have, but you might be able to go to somebody else. They mention a story of one of the scholars that a man used to attack him and criticize him, be always angry with him. This person, it just happened that he lost his servant. He had a maid. She died. So he thought, his brother said to him, no one can help you except so and so. He said, but you know what I have been saying about him for the last 2 years. He said, just go and ask him to do the janazah, to lead the janazah. Ask that scholar to come and lead the janazah. So he went and invited him. That scholar said, I will come. Came and did the janazah, and he said to him, so who is looking after you now? He said, no one. He said to him, okay, come to my house. And then he gave him some money. And then he said to him, may I ask you to do something? He said, sure. And he thought he's now asking him to do some job for him in return of the money that he's given. He said, I want you to go to the market and get me a servant, choose something that's really perfect. So he went and he got what is needed, and he thought this is for the judge, and the judge paid for it, and then he